Well, good morning. Good morning, everybody. Hope you're doing well on this Wednesday. This is the middle of the week, hump day, as we used to call it. Hump day. I'm Brother David Harrison. This is the Preacher's Podcast, coming to you live from here in the great U.S. of A., here in East Tennessee, Kingsport, Tennessee. And I'm Brother David Harrison. So glad to see you this morning. Hope you're feeling well wherever you are, wherever you're located, whether you're here in the States or whether you're on the other side of the world, some other country. We'll welcome you to our Preacher's Podcast. Folks are signing in as I speak. I see them signing in. So be sure and hit the like button and the share button. Share this with a friend or family member. Tell somebody about the Preacher's Podcast is on the air. We're in the book of Leviticus this morning. We'll be studying the chapter 20, I believe. Yes, chapter 20. We did 18 on Monday and 19 yesterday, so we're in chapter 20 today. Try to get through chapter 20 into 21 and cover as much as we can. There's Miss Leah from up in this nation of Canada, our neighbors to the north. Good to see you this morning, Miss Leah. Hope you're doing well. And so we'll cover chapter 20. We've got about 7 or 8 more chapters to go, and Leviticus will be behind us. And then we'll move on to the next book, which will be the book of Numbers. Interesting book. This will be the travels and the journeys of Israel in the wilderness. We've covered a lot of do's and don'ts and the law and the moral law and all the dietary laws and the priest and the building of the tabernacle. Most of that has been in Exodus. Most of it's been in Leviticus. Exodus was the deliverance and the establishment of the law and the beginning of all the things that Moses was given by God. But Leviticus has just been nothing more than just reiterating everything that God gave Moses, and Moses is giving it to his people. And it's been a lot of repetition, and that's how God teaches, line upon line, line upon line, here a little, there a little. And so he's repeating everything again. Hey, Miss Amber, good to see you this morning. I'm sorry. I am so sorry. Something happened to the disconnect. We got cut off. I am so sorry. Please forgive. There it is again. There we go. Well, I don't know what it is, whether it's the weather or whether it is something else going on. We've had problems with the internet. I lost Facebook a few days ago. It was off about half a day, and then it's been having some glitches. And just as I got started, as Leah and Amber came on, I lost it for about 30 seconds. So we're back. I don't know what to do. It's not me. I'm 15 feet from my Wi-Fi router, so it's not on my end. It's on the signal up above us. Something's in the heavens, and Satan is the prince of the power of the air. Hello again. That's right. Good morning twice in the same day. So anyway, glad you're back. Good to have you back. I'll play a song, give this thing a chance to make sure it's going to do right before we get to talking too much. Here's a good song for the day, because it's a cloudy, overcast day and kind of dreary. It's hot. It's going to be 88 today, 60. I think it's 66 right now, but 88 today for a high close to 90. And here's a song by the old Happy Goodman family. What a beautiful day for the Lord to come again. I wish it'd be today. How about you? It might be today.
As I wake up with the morning of each day that passes by, and I listen to the sound of my ears, I can't help but keep a watch toward the eastern skies, and I wonder if the trumpet will be the next sound that I hear.
Here's Miss Vestal. What a
Beautiful day for the Lord to come again. What a beautiful day for Him to take His children home. Lord, to see His face.
Oh, that's not Vestal. That's Johnny. I was wrong. That's Johnny Cook. Yeah, Johnny started singing with him some. He sung just like Vestal. That's a man singing. I forgot that. 2003. Johnny sung on that one. Took over Miss Vestal's place. I think this is Howard singing this verse.
All my earthly disappointments,
Yeah, that's Howard. That's her husband.
and my trials here below fade away when I remember
His last word. He said, when he return and receive his children unto him, and I'm longing to look upon.
on the face of my Lord.
Here we go now.
What a beautiful day for the Lord to come again. What a beautiful
Hey, Miss Rebecca, good to see you.
to take his
Children out in Kansas, cornfields, wheat fields, whatever.
his face and to touch his nail-scarred hand. What a beautiful day for the Lord to come again. What a beautiful day for the Lord to come
I love that. Well, that's the Happy Goodmans this morning. What a beautiful day for the Lord to come again. And I'd forgot that song, the what you think is a lady singing there, the high part, that is not Vestal. That's Johnny that used to sing with her. He sung just like Vestal. They ran across him somewhere around the end of the millennium, around the late 1900s to, I guess it's close to 2000. This was recorded in 2003. And he traveled with them, sung, and give Vestal a break, and did it kind of as a show because he sounded just like her. And when that took off to singing, I recognized. I said, that ain't Vestal, that's Johnny. But he sung just like her. They used to make a lot of fun about it, and it was a lot of fun to see him do that. He could sing. Just a great singer. He's still alive. He's still singing as far as I know. And, yeah, Vestal does a good job. I'll play it another day, and I'll get Vestal's version. Her version's better, but Johnny did good. I love the song. Well, welcome to the Preacher's Podcast. I'm Brother David Harrison, and this is the Preacher's Podcast coming to you live from my home office here in Kingsport, Tennessee. Beautiful Kingsport, Tennessee. We love it here. East Tennessee, gateway to the Smokies on the west side, and we're in the Smokies as far as that goes, and we're just right across the mountains is North Carolina. We got the Smokies in between. The Smokies run north to south, all the way down in Mississippi, all the way up into almost New York, the Blue Ridge Mountains, and we are right here at it. And so, yeah, you could tell it wasn't her. It was that was Johnny. So I love Johnny. I met him years ago when he started singing with them. And good man, good voice, and a lot of fun. They had a lot of fun with that. That was something pretty cool. Hear a man sing like Vestal, but he had a high voice. Lord of mercy, that guy could sing. He'd get up there and rattle the rafters, and all they do break champagne glasses when they get up so high. He get up about that high to break a glass. So anyway, well, I hope you're doing good this morning. I am hanging in there, feeling fairly good. I slept all night last night. First time since I had surgery, so almost 6 weeks. I did not get up at all last night. I slept the entire night. I went to bed about 11 something. Hey, Brother Gary, I went to bed. It was after 11 o'clock or about 11 o'clock. Time we prayed, it was after 11. And I woke up at just a couple minutes till 6, a few minutes till 6. So I slept about 6.5 hours and never got up, never moved, I don't think. And I woke up just a little bit before 6 and got up. So I had a long night's rest, a good night's rest. So praise the Lord. That is amazing. Yeah, it is awesome. Well, yeah, that's amazing for me because I usually up 2 or 3 times. And so I didn't even wake up to take any pain medicine. I didn't wake up hurting. I haven't taken anything this morning. I did take something yesterday. I was up all day yesterday and Monday. I about overdid it. I sat in my recliner too much, and I had to charge my stimulator, and I did it while I was sitting in my recliner. Before lunch, after I did my podcast, I did it. and it takes about an hour and a half, 2 hours. And by the time I got through, I was hurting really bad. Hey, Brother Mike Worrell, good to see you. And so I finally laid on the couch after lunch. After I ate lunch, I laid on the couch and rested. And I took something, I don't know, it was on up in the evening, probably 6 o'clock. I took something to kind of knock the pain out a little bit. Not anything strong like I was taking during the surgery. Just take something I usually take for my back. And it kind of relaxed me, and I went to bed and slept all night. So things are picking up, and I can sleep all night. That's a blessing. Well, we're in the book of Leviticus, and we just got about 7 more chapters after this to go, and we'll be through with Leviticus. And I'm ready to move on. We've been bogged down in Leviticus because it's got so much stuff, so many details about how the priest robes and the tabernacle and the furniture, and just a lot of stuff we was able to share. And I hope you've enjoyed this. It's been a good book. Now, where we're at right now is kind of routine. God's repeating himself here. Moses is reminding God's people of what they've already been told. And he's going into a little bit longer discussion about the rules and the laws and the punishment. And chapter 20 we're covered today, he's dealing with the sins. Hey, Brother Greg. Hey, Miss Darlene. He's dealing with the things that cause, hey, Brother Gary from Mountain, Kansas, good to see you. You got a new pastor, Joel Updegrove. Okay, good. Well, congratulations. I'm anxious to hear him. If y'all do live stream or you do some recordings of him, be sure I get access to his preaching. I want to hear him, and I hope he does good. I wish you the best. You know, I'm praying for you. And Joel Updegrove, I'm anxious to hear where he's from, a little bit about it, and hope he does good there in Smoky Hill Baptist for you guys. I've been praying for you every day, and glad God finally gave you a pastor. So anyway, you understand it now. Well, I'm glad. That's my purpose in teaching these books, because a lot of people stay away from the Old Testament books because they are kind of difficult, and sometimes they do get mundane because they just repeat themselves a lot. But there's a purpose in that. And the entire purpose of Leviticus is for the purpose of teaching Israel that God wants them to be holy. And he's given them restrictions, and the things like yesterday, not to sow different seeds in the same field, and not to mix cattle of different breeds, and not to wear different clothing of different types. It's all a principle that God's teaching his people. He's trying to show them the difference between truth and error, the difference between right and wrong. He's trying to teach them to be holy, to have spiritual discernment. Don't mix corn and wheat. Don't mix linen and wool. Don't interbreed your cattle with different breeds. And don't mix truth and error. And don't get tangled up with the gods that you came out of Egypt, or the gods that's going to be in Canaan. He's teaching them truth and error because they're going into a land that is mixed up. Now, Numbers is going to be really good, because Numbers is going to deal more with the life of Israel as they're traveling through the journey through the wilderness on the way to the Promised Land. And there's a whole lot of things in there that's going to deal with a lot of stuff we've not covered. Rebellion against Moses, the attack against the man of God, how he establishes the authorities to come up and help him rule, and then how God provides for them through the wilderness. But it's not going to be so much emphasis on what God did in Mount Sinai, the 10 Commandments and the dietary laws, things like that. It's not going to be as much of that in Numbers as it has been in the last part of Exodus and all of Leviticus. Now, Leviticus chapter 20 today, this is basically the sins that are, God uses this chapter to deal with the sins that are worthy of capital punishment. These are the sins that are judged very severely. Now, there's some in here that he mentions that aren't severely punished, but he does deal with these that are judged by capital punishment. These are capital punishment crimes, so he goes over them. So let's read chapter 20 first, and then I'll make some comments at the end as I did yesterday. It seems to work better. So in verse number 1, same phrase, and the Lord spake unto Moses. That's over and over and over and over again. So the Lord speaking to Moses, again thou shalt say to the children of Israel, he's telling Moses, you tell them what I've told you, you make it clear to the people, you're my spokesman. God is not speaking to Israel, God is speaking to Israel through Moses. He is God's mouthpiece. So God is giving him instructions, and he is instructing the people. So again, thou wilt say to the children of Israel, whosoever he be of the children of Israel, or of the strangers. So he includes the strangers here, not just the Jews, not just the children of Israel, the tribes of Jacob, the children of Jacob, sons of Jacob, but he's also included any strangers that travel among them. This law applies also to them. He says, the strangers that sojourn in Israel, verse 2, that giveth any of his seed unto Molech. In other words, if anybody among the children of Israel are strangers that's journeying and traveling with them, offer their children up to the false god Molech. Here's what he said. He shall surely be put to death. The people of the land shall stone him with stones. So that's capital punishment number 1. So we'll get back to that in just a little bit. Verse 3. And I'll set my face against that man, will cut him off from among his people, because he hath given of his seed unto Molech to defile my sanctuary and to profane my holy name. He's worshiping a false god, gives his children to the god Molech. That's worthy of capital punishment, worthy of death. They'll be stoned. And so he said, I'm going to set my face against them. Verse 4. And if the people of the land do anyways hide their eyes from the man, when he giveth of his seed unto Molech, and kill him not, then I'll set my face against that man, and against his family, will cut him off, all that go a whoring after him, to commit whoredoms with Molech from among the people. So God said, not only am I going to, hey, Miss Legenda, hey, Brother Edwin, good to see you all the way from the other side of the world today. Thank you for joining us. So God said, not only will I judge the man that does it, but I'm going to judge anybody that turns their face away from it and ignores it, does not judge him according to the law that I've given. I'm going to judge him and his family severely. And so verse 6, and the soul that turneth after such as have familiar spirits, and after wizards, to go whoring after them, I'll even set my face against that soul, and will cut him off from among the people. Sanctify yourselves, therefore, be ye holy, for I am the Lord your God. So God brings up the wizards and the witches and wizards, those that go after familiar spirits, that also stay away from them. God said he'd turn his face against them that go after those that seek familiar spirits and wizards and witchcraft, Satanism. He goes on into detail. Verse number 8, ye shall keep my statutes. He reminds them he's Jehovah. He is Jehovah. That's why they have to do this, because he's the Lord. He makes the rules. He said, you shall keep my statutes, do them. I am the Lord which sanctify you. I've set you apart. I've pulled you out of Egypt. I've called you unto myself, and so you shall do what I say. Verse 9. And everyone that curseth his father or mother shall surely be put to death. Boy, that's tough. But that was the law of Moses. If you cursed your father or mother, that was capital punishment, capital crime. You say that's pretty severe. I don't know. The more I think about it, I don't know how severe that is. That's an awful crime that God would. The only law that God gave that had promise with it was honor your father and mother, that your days will be long. No other commandment had a promise with it but that commandment. And God says if you break that commandment, he said, if you curse your mom and daddy, he said, I'm going to judge him. He's going to be severely with death. He said, he shall be cursed. He that cursed his father or mother, his blood shall be upon him. Verse 10, and the man that committeth adultery with another man's wife, even he that committeth adultery with his neighbor's wife, the adulterer and the adulteress shall surely be put to death. Now that's a strange thing. God made the judgment for man and woman that committed adultery. But when those men brought the woman to Jesus that was taken in the very act of adultery, they wanted to stone her, but they said nothing about stoning the man. You ever thought about that? They were not obeying the law, and God said he'd hold them accountable too. Verse 11, and the man that lieth with his father's wife hath uncovered his father's nakedness. Both of them shall be surely put to death. Their blood shall be upon them. Pretty strong stuff. If a man lie with his daughter-in-law, both of them shall surely be put to death. They have wrought confusion. Their blood shall be upon them. If a man lie with a man as he lieth with a woman, both of them have committed abomination. They shall surely be put to death. Their blood shall be upon them. That's homosexuality, sodomy. So, verse 14, if a man take a wife and her mother, it is wickedness. You can't marry a girl and her mother too. You can't have a relationship with both. They shall be burned with fire, both he and they, that there be no wickedness among you. If a man lie with a beast, he shall be put to death, and you shall slay the beast also. Both man and beast will be destroyed if they practice that gross sin. If a woman approach unto any beast and lie down thereunto, thou shalt kill the woman and the beast. They shall be surely put to death. Their blood shall be upon them. If a man shall take his sister, his father's daughter, or his mother's daughter, and see her nakedness, and she see his nakedness, it's a wicked thing. They shall be cut off in the sight of their people, he hath uncovered his sister's nakedness, he shall bear his iniquity. Now that's not capital punishment, but they're cut off. They're not killed, but they're cut off, and we'll talk about that. If a man shall lie with a woman after her having her sickness, and shall uncover her nakedness, and hath discovered her fountain, she hath uncovered the fountain of her blood, both of them shall be cut off among the people. That also is not a capital crime, but it is punishable. They're cut off from among their people. That's for somebody that tries to have a relationship with a woman that's in her way. She's having her monthly, and that was forbidden by God. Both of them had to be judged. Verse 19, because she was considered unclean. Verse 19, thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of thy mother's sister, or thy father's sister, for he uncovered his near kin, they shall bear their iniquity. So basically he was saying they weren't to have any relationship with family, and they weren't to see the nakedness of family. Whether they had sexual acts or not, they couldn't see their nakedness. It would cause them to be guilty of sin, and they'd bear their sin and iniquity and be judged accordingly. Verse 20, if a man lie with his uncle's wife, he that hath covered her uncle's nakedness, they shall bear their sin, and they shall die childless. So they're going to be put to death. If a man shall take his brother's wife, it's an unclean thing. He hath cut and covered his brother's nakedness, they shall be childless. Ye shall therefore keep all my statutes and all my judgments, God says, and do them, that the land, whether I bring you to dwell therein, spew you not out. And ye shall walk in the manners of the and ye shall not walk in the manners of the nations. Don't do like the Canaanites do, or the Egyptians, which I cast out before you, for they committed all these things, and therefore I abhorred them. But I've said unto you, you shall inherit their land, and I will give unto you to possess it, a land that floweth with milk and honey. I am the Lord your God, which have separated you from other people. You shall therefore put difference between clean beast and unclean, between unclean fowls and clean. You shall not make your souls abominable by beast or by fowl, by any manner of living thing that creepeth on the ground, which I have separated from you as unclean. Ye shall be holy unto me, for I am the Lord, am holy, and have severed you from other people, that you should be mine. A man also or a woman that hath a familiar spirit, or that is a wizard, shall surely be put to death. They shall stone them with stones, their blood shall be upon them. He mentions the wizards and familiar spirits quite a bit, because that was practiced in the land of Canaan as well as in Egypt. The seeking of the horoscopes, the fortune-telling, the seeking after familiar spirits to talk to the dead, all of that was a part of Egyptian religion, as well as the practice of the Canaanites, where they were going to dwell in the promised land given to Abraham by covenant. So God is preparing them, and God is saying to them, all of these things they've done and they do, and all the things that I brought you out of, you can't do. Why? Because I'm holy, and I've separated you. I've severed you from other people to make you a holy people, so you can't do that. If you do these things, some of these things are going to be judged by death, stoned to death, or burned by fire. Other things, you're going to be cut off from your people. Not killed, but you're going to be childless, and you're going to be cut off from your people. So, pretty severe judgment, but God is trying to bring upon Israel the importance of his laws to produce a holy people and a separate people. And I can just say about the church today, he's no less lenient with us that take the name of Christ. God did not save us just to keep us out of hell. God saved us to be a light and a witness in this world. And God saved us to be a reflection of Jesus Christ. God saved us to be holy, separated from the world, separated unto him, so the world could see Christ in us, and therefore come to know him as Lord and Savior by the testimony we live and share. And that's what God's intention is to get a bride for his son. And that bride is to be without spot or blemish or wrinkle or any such thing. And so we don't have the freedom and the liberty under grace to do the things that he forbade Israel to do. Now, God didn't pass the dietary laws and all the restrictions of the Sabbath day laws. All of those are not enforced today for the church. But the moral laws that are in these 10 commandments, adultery and murder and lying and tale-bearing and honoring your father and mother and honoring the Lord thy God and keeping him first in your life, All of those things are still in force today. And so God wants us to be a holy people. He says that in Peter. He said, be ye holy, therefore, for I am holy. So there's no difference in God's desire for the church than it was for Israel. He's trying to pull himself a people out of this world that will be holy and reflect who God really is. So let's go through this quickly. Nowhere in the Word of God is punishment extended to the people of God for the purpose of reforming them. God does not give punishment of this severity to reform people. I'm afraid America has become a nation of judges that judge people and send them to prison to try to reform them. And some people are so dumb enough to think that prison and severe punishment reforms people. But God didn't do any of these things in this chapter to reform people. He did this as a deterrent to sin. This is about the objective of God, is to show his people that if they sin, they're going to pay the price. And punishment was a crime, was for a deterrent to crime, not for a reforming from one doing crime. It was a deterrent, so that someone who committed these crimes, they were killed and stoned and burned, and it was caused the others that look on to see that God doesn't play games. And if you sin these sins, you're going to die the same judgment they did. So it was a deterrent to crime. And I'm afraid that's why America has crime raging in our streets, is because we have tried to reform criminals instead of deter crime. And so this is a deterrent to cause people to see that punishment is just, and punishment is real, and punishment is severe, and punishment is eternal. Because once you take a man's life, that punishment is done. He's gone. He can't sin anymore. He can't rape anymore. He can't commit adultery, or he can't steal, or he can't do the things that God forbid. He can't do them anymore. So God used it as a deterrent. Now, the first capital punishment crime is in verse number 1. He brings this up first. He mentioned it in chapter 19 yesterday, and now he starts out chapter 20 with this same thing again, talking about those that offer up their children to the false god Molech. Those that offer their children as sacrifices, they would take that stone statue, or if it was made out of gold or metal, whatever it's made out of, and they would get it as hot as it could be. And the god Molech, his arms were stuck out like this, as though he was reaching for you to give a sacrifice to him. And the arms of the god Molech would be burning red like an ember, hundreds of degrees hot. And they would take their children and lay it in the arms of Molech. And literally those children would scream bloody murder, and they were basically being burnt to death at a slow pace in the arms of an idol that was heated to hundreds of degrees, that literally, without being so gross, the skin of those babies would melt off of their bones, and the babies would catch fire, and they would be consumed in the arms of a false god. And God says this is serious. And so God is speaking to Moses, and not to Aaron and not to the people, but to Moses, and Moses is to tell the people. And I believe the reason he's doing this is because he's trying to impress upon the people that God himself is going to judge them. But they themselves need to be accountable, that if they see this sin, they can't look away from it, because God would hold them accountable too. The judgment of God is now in the hands of man. Man is to fulfill God's judgment. If they don't, God will judge not only the one that sinned, but the ones that turn away from sin and refuse to punish it. So this is in the hands of Moses, and Moses sticks it to the people that this is in your responsibility as well. Stoning to death was the penalty for the crime of giving their children to the false god Molech in verse number 1. And Jesus loves children, because in Matthew 19, he said, suffer the children to come to me and forbid them not, for such is the kingdom of heaven. Jesus loves little children. And so he punished severely those in the Old Testament that offered their children to strange gods. He said in verse number 3, he said, I'll set my face against the man, will cut him off from among his people, because he's given his seed to Molech to defile my sanctuary and profane my name. This is the strongest language possible that God could use when God says, I'll set my face against that man. Was this an unpardonable sin? I don't know if it was unpardonable or not, but it brought death. Every man was given this word from God: I'll cut him off from among his people. This was a sin against God. And God says that he would set his face against that man and cut him off from his people. He said it defiled his sanctuary. He said, when you do this, you defile my sanctuary. And he said, you also profane my holy name. Ezekiel 23, 37, 39, you find that the children of Israel did just this, and it was one of the reasons that God's judgment came upon them. Remember, the idolatry was a high treason in the nation that was supposed to be a theocracy, that God was supposed to be their God. So this was idolatry, basically worshiping other gods and idols. And so in Ezekiel, God judged them because they were offering their children to strange gods. So you come down to verse 4 and 5. He goes a little deeper in this. He said, if a man remains silent when his neighbor is worshiping Molech by offering his child, he was basically become a partner in crime. He would be guilty of the same crime, or a partner in crime. And God was going to hold him guilty, and he would be cut off from his people, which was tantamount to the death penalty. If he cut them off from among their people, they were outcast among the nation of Israel. That was just as severe as if they had been put to death. So not only is the danger for the person that does the offering to the false god, but also it's dangerous for those that watch it and turn their face away and don't do anything about it. God said it's a sin against God. You have profaned my temple. You profaned my holy name. And if you as a neighbor see somebody do this, he said, I'm going to cut you off. The one that does it, I'm going to cut him off from his people. I'm going to turn my face against him. He's going to be put to death. If you see it and don't say it, if you see it and don't tell it, if you see it and condone it, then I'm going to turn my face against you, and I'm going to cut you off from the people as well. So it's a pretty serious thing. Idolatry is still a serious sin today. Men still practice idolatry. You may not bow down to a stone statue or throw your child into a flaming fire to a false god, but anything that comes between you and God is idolatry. Even in the New Testament book of Ephesians, God equates covetousness is idolatry. The love of money, the love of things, the love of anything more or as much as you love God. Hey, Brother Krieger, good to see you, preacher. Anything you love as much as God or more than God is considered idolatry. If it's a job, a career, a car, a hobby, a habit, a person, a thing, whatever it is, anything you worship as much or love as much, money, wealth, fame, power, anything you love as much or more than God or in the place of God is considered idolatry. Now, God doesn't judge idolatry today by the death penalty, but he would be just in doing so. If he wanted to, he would be just in doing so. It would probably change a lot of people in church, probably change a lot of people out of church. But idolatry is a serious thing, worshiping another god. And so this was for God's people Israel. They were pulled out of the world to be a separated people, and God was not going to put up with idolatry. They tried to pull it one time since they left Egypt. Aaron tried to lie his way out of that one. Moses, all I know is we just throwed some gold in the fire and it came out this golden calf. Yeah, it just made itself. Just automatically formed itself. No, he made it with his hands. He crafted it with his hands and gave them a God. They wanted a God because Moses was gone. They wanted a God they could see, touch, feel, and worship. So God judged them because Aaron gave them a false god, a golden calf, and God judged a bunch of them. And God is reminding them now, I brought you out of Egypt, and they worship gods there, other gods. I brought you out of Egypt, you're going to Canaan, and they are idolaters. And you've already proven to me that you have a tendency to do that because you did it with a golden calf. So I'm telling you now, if you offer your children to a false god Molech, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to destroy you. You're going to be cut off. And you that see it, don't say it, I'm going to judge you too. You can be cut off from the people, which is as severe as being put to death. So now he comes in verse number 6 to something he keeps bringing up. And some of you may wonder, why does he bring up this familiar spirit thing? Because all through the land of Canaan and all through Egypt, familiar spirits Witchcraft and Satanism was in great force. It was just a part of, that's why everything the Pharaoh did, he called his sorcerers. You see that all through the book of Exodus and Genesis. They call their sorcerers. It's what Joseph dealt with when Joseph was brought up out of prison to answer the dream of the king. He had done, the Pharaoh, he had done sought all of his sorceries, all of his magicians, as they call them, magicians and sorcerers, and all of his smart alecks that's supposed to know everything. Nobody could answer the dream or interpret the dream of Pharaoh, but Joseph did. And so wizardry and familiar spirits and seeking the voice of the dead and trying to read your fortune and read the future in horoscopes, reading the stars. They really loved the stars. They were really based in what we would call horoscopes today. Hey, Brother Elliot, the reason, and it was still in existence in Jesus' time. How do you know that? Well, when Jesus was already gone to Jerusalem, when he fled Jerusalem, and he went for a couple of years running from Pharaoh. When he went down to Egypt, he was left for a couple of years until the age of 2 is when he came back to his home. There was wise men that saw his star in the east. And these were not magicians, and these were not necessarily sorcerers or people that practiced witchcraft, but they did practice looking at the stars. And they had heard the prophecy of Daniel when he was in Babylon. It had been passed down through Daniel that there was going to be one born a king of the Jews and that he would be identified with a star. So they saw his star, and the reason they understood it because of prophecy, but also because they looked to the stars. They tried to read the stars. They tried to tell things by what they could see in the outer atmosphere of the stars in the universe. So that's part of what that existed in that time. But this is not exactly horoscopes and men that look to the stars. These are people that tried to seek seances to talk to the dead. They tried to call up dead people, as they did, the witch of Endor did with Samuel. And they tried to predict the future, interpret dreams. They practiced witchery or magicians, just like in Moses' day when he went to deliver them from Pharaoh's hand. Everything that he did that was a miracle, the magicians matched it. The magicians of Egypt could make a serpent turn to a stick and a stick turn to a serpent. And all the things that Moses did, they tried to copy because they were magicians operating under the power, the prince of the power of the air. So God brings this up often because it's a problem, because he knows that Israel's going to have a tendency to go after that sort of thing. I mean, the first king, you gotta look at it like it is. This is the truth. The first king of Israel, Saul, which God never intended them to have a king but him, but they wanted a king, so that God gave them a king, and they paid a price dearly for it. And all the kings after that but David, and David messed up too. But all the kings after that were nothing but just a pistol for God to have to deal with. They were loaded guns that didn't have no control, self-control, and most of them allowed Baal worship and all kinds of other things to take place. But the very first king of Israel turned to familiar spirits, because when he wasn't hearing from God, he went to the witch of Endor. Imagine a king going to a witch to seek her counsel. Well, that's why God is saying, hey, Miss Amy, good to see you. That's why God is giving these instructions now, because he foresees in the future what they're going to do. They have a tendency to this. And so I want to say this, and I don't want to be meddling this morning, but I'm a preacher, so I've got to run a rabbit trail once in a while. I don't have time for Christians that make light and they joke about it. Well, I got to look at my horoscope to see what today is going to happen, how things today are going to go, whether I need to do something or not. They read their horoscope. Hey, Brother Dwayne Johnson, long time no see, buddy. Hope you're doing well. To read horoscopes is the same thing as to consult wizards, familiar spirits. Horoscopes is nothing more than just witchcraft. And that's what God is talking to Israel about now. And we're guilty of it today. Of course, our nation's guilty of more than just horoscopes. We have full-blown witchcraft, full-blown seances, full-blown Satanism in massive numbers. It's even crept into the church. Our young people delve into this witchcraft. I've dealt with witches. I've dealt with people in Satanism. I've had them in my services try to cast spells on me while I was preaching. I went blind twice while I was preaching in 2 separate youth meetings where there were people there that were casting spells on me. And in one meeting in Maiden, North Carolina, down below Hickory, I was doing a message on rock music and Satanism, and I used the message title, Faces in the Fire, because we had just burned about $250,000 worth of albums and all types of paraphernalia. And I had a professional photographer that took pictures of the fire while they were all burning, and we picked out at least a dozen clear pictures of demon faces in the fire. And I showed that along with other stuff, and I did a message that night. And the high priest of the Church of Satan of Catawba County, which was the county that Maiden is in, came that night with his sidekick dressed in black with a goat's head, a chain around his neck with a pentagram on it, upside down cross over his heart. And he sat back there the whole time and did all kinds of spells and incantations while I preached. And finally, about halfway through my message while I was doing the videos, I got to a certain slide in a certain video, and that's when he took his strongest punch at me, and I went totally blind, did not know where I was at. I could not see the board. I could not see the pictures. I could not see where I was standing in the middle of the aisle there looking at the screen. I could not see. I began to plead the blood, and my 6 or 7 guys that were praying for me under the platform, they knew something was wrong. They couldn't see me, but they heard me, and they began to pray, and you could hear them through the entire audience, probably 600-700 people there. I think it held about 600 to 700 people. It was packed full, standing room only, and they began to plead the blood of Jesus, and when they did, about 30 seconds I was blind, 30 to 40 seconds I was totally blind. It came back, and I realized where I was at. I could understand what I saw, and God broke whatever they were trying to do to me, and I was free. But by the time I got through with that service, we had people saved, and it was just a miraculous night, but it was such a satanic-filled battle that like I've never faced before. And the guys literally had to help me to the van that night, and when I got in the van that I drove, I had a Ford custom van with captain seats, and I got in the seat behind the driver's seat and laid back in the captain's seat. I had no strength. I was totally weak. They'd given me something to drink, and I was taking some stuff to try to replenish my liquids because I was dehydrated. And I told the boy driving, Neil was driving, I said, Neil, I said, put such and such tape in and put it on such and such song and play and hit the road and let's go. And so he drove and played that song all the way down the road until I come to my senses and kind of got my strength back, because I had been in warfare like I'd never been in before. And that satanic high priest was there praying, yoga, all that Eastern stuff. When the Beatles came over, they started promoting that Eastern Oriental stuff. Transcendental meditation was big in the 60s when the Beatles came out. They began the drugs, the LSD. Timothy Leary created the drug LSD, and he said that under the influence of LSD, you're able to see the fifth dimension, which is a dimension that the normal eye can't see. But that's why these album covers and things that they made back then had pictures like Uriah Heep had a picture on the album Bombadog, and it was nothing but a picture of a demon. And they were able to see things in the fifth dimension under the influence of LSD and drugs. They were able to see stuff that you and I couldn't see, which was the dimensions where the spirits work, the spirit realm of Satan and his demons. And so these guys that run these satanic churches, so-called, they came out against me, and they tried to do everything they could to stop me, and for a few seconds did. But I was sick for 2 weeks. I had infection in my body the next day. I had to go to the doctor, go on antibiotics and steroids. I was sick because I had done battle with the devil, and it affected my body. And it's real. And so God knew this with Israel. And I don't know how I got off on all that, but I've dealt with that through the years. And God knew this about Israel. And it's not just Israel, it's about mankind. Mankind has this fascination with the underworld and the dark world of spiritism. There's something about it that draws a person, and especially young people. There's a magnetism there. You need to watch your young people. You need to be careful what they watch and what they listen to and what they're reading and what they're seeing on Facebook and TikTok and these other perverted sites that people put up for young folk to attract them, because it's pure Satanism. It's pure demonic. It draws kids in, and they get so hooked. And I'm telling you, I mean, I was in a church one time in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and I was showing my slides of rock music, and I showed that slide of Uriah Heep, which is a rock group, Uriah Heep. Some of y'all old guys remember that. Uriah Heep and the album Abominog. And when that picture came up on the slide, there's a girl, she was probably 17, 18, and she screamed and ran out the back door. The pastor went after her because she'd been coming there and visited. Pastor and his wife both went out the back door and called her. She was at the door fixing to go out. He called her and said, "What's the matter?" She was just terrified. She was shaking. And he took her in a room, and they began to talk to her and pray with her and calm her down. And they sent a message back in there to me as soon as the service was over and said, "The preacher needs to see you as quick as you can get." So I left everybody, went back to the back. And they were in a Sunday school class with her, and she was just as white as a sheet. And I walked in. I said, "What's going on?" I said, "Sis." I called her Sis. I didn't know her name. I said, "Are you okay?" She said, "No." She said, "Where'd you get that picture?" I said, "What picture?" She said, "I've seen him. I know him." I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "When you were doing the slides," said, "you showed his picture." Said, "He's been in my room." Said, "I've talked to him." And I said, "Young lady, I don't have a clue." And found out, finally discovered what it was. She was talking about, hey, Brother Gary Cox. She was talking about that album cover from Uriah Heep, Abominog. And she had said, I was with a witches coven in Winston-Salem. She said, there were 13 of us. And she said, I was in a witches coven. She even said, I got pregnant by the, what they call the wizard, the high priest of the coven. I got pregnant, and they took my baby, aborted it, and offered it up as a sacrifice to Satan. And she said, I've been in my rooms many times and called up demon spirits. And she said, I've called that demon spirit up many times. She said, that's not his name, Abominog. I know him by a different name. And she told me, I forget what it was. But she said, that's not his name. But she said, I know his face. She said, I know it anywhere. She said, I've talked to him many times. And she said, I would be in my room, and when he would come up and begin to speak to me and manifest himself, she said, my temperature in my room would go down 30 degrees. That's what she said. I'm just telling you, this is not makeup. This ain't what I read in the book. And so why did God say and deal with this wizardry and familiar spirit stuff so often in the book of Leviticus? Because he knew that Israel had a tendency to lean toward that because they came out of Egypt and they were going to Canaan. And Canaan was a great practice of witchcraft and demonism. And then God also knows mankind. That is his nature. Like I said, the first king of Israel, Saul, when he sought counsel, he went after the witch of Endor. Case settled. So God is warning them. So look in verse number 6. I got to move. I didn't mean to get off on all that. Another practice of the Canaanites that were already in the land was the false religion, which is definitely satanic, these false religions. Satan worship is what really it is, supernatural Satan worship. Satan's a liar and the father of lies, and God says that he would set his face against the soul of the one that turns to this kind of false worship. So God says, if you seek after familiar spirits or wizards and go whoring after them, I'm going to set my face against you, and I'll cut you off from among the people. So God makes that part of his law. In verse 27 of Leviticus chapter 20, we'll read that later, he says, if a man or woman has a familiar spirit or wizard shall surely be put to death. So he later says in chapter 20, in verse 27, he says they shall be put to death. That's the last verse of the chapter. We're reading in verse 6 where he says he'd cut them off. But he closes out this chapter with the same topic again, familiar spirits and wizards. And I'm going to have you put to death if you do that. That's how severe it is, and how certainly God is serious about this thing. Why did God exact the same death penalty for participating in these satanic rites of the occult? Why did he do that? He says in verse number 7, he said, sanctify yourselves therefore, and be ye holy, for I am the Lord your God. And ye shall keep my statutes and do them. I am the Lord which sanctify you. These verses offer a good, sufficient reason for the death penalty. Why? Because the people were to be holy because they belonged to God and he was holy. So God says, you're supposed to be holy, and I can't allow my holy people to be worshiping the false gods of the one who rebelled in heaven, and I had to kick him out. You got to understand this. If you're going to worship false gods that are directly satanic and they're under the influence of Satan, you're going to worship gods that are under the control of Satan, and Satan is the archangel that God had to kick out of heaven because he rebelled against God. So God knows the tendency is if you follow after the false gods of Satan, you're going to turn against God Jehovah. And he's your God that brought you up out of Egypt. And he called you to be holy. And you can't be holy worshiping the false gods of the one that I had to kick out of heaven, called Lucifer, Satan. Mic drop. You can't worship God and worship the God of this world, because God had to judge him severely. And one day he's going to be cast into the lake of fire. So how could God just sit back and say, well, it's no big thing if you want to offer up your children or you want to worship some false? That's no big thing. Big thing. God had to kick him out of heaven. He spent 6,000 years trying to destroy mankind. God's going to bind him for 1,000 years in the bottomless pit and turn him loose for a little while, and he's going to deceive a multitude again. Then God's going to finally judge him and kick him off into the lake of fire forever, where the beast and the false prophet are, and every person that's rejected Jesus Christ. So if the ultimate end of Satan is going to be the lake of fire, then if you try to follow him, you're going to end up going to the lake of fire with him. Or at the least, you're going to be on the wrong side of God. And God's going to come against you. And I certainly don't want to have God turned against me. I used to talk about Percy Ray being the greatest man of prayer I ever met, that I'd rather have nobody praying for me than Percy Ray. But in the same voice, I'd say, but there's nobody I'd rather not pray against me than Percy Ray. Because if he prayed against me, I knew I was dead. I'd rather have him praying for me than any man I knew. But I certainly did not want him praying against me. Because if he prayed against me, I was as sure as dead. That's how strong a man of prayer he was. And God is saying, if you do this, I'm going to set my face against you and I'm going to judge you. So God had the right to do this. You said, well, why did God make it so severe? He just told us, because I am the Lord. You keep my statutes. I'm the Lord your God, and I'm the Lord which sanctify you. I'm Jehovah. And he told Moses that when he called Moses. I'm no longer going to be called El Shaddai. You know I'm a mighty God, but you don't know me as Jehovah. But from here on out, my people is going to know me, and everybody else is going to know me as Yahweh. And that's the God of all. I am God above all gods. I'm King of kings, Lord of lords. There is none other beside me. There's no other God but me. I am Yahweh. And God makes that clear all through these chapters. And he's repeating these laws. But these particular ones he's bringing out that are worthy of capital punishment. So let's go to the next one in verse number 9. We got to hurry. Whoso curseth father or mother shall surely be put to death. He that curseth his father or mother, his blood shall be upon him. Now this one is very important to me. I'm troubled by it. Not by the punishment, but by the law that's involved in it. About a year ago, God burdened me about something, and it's personal. And I've experienced some of this, but God burdened me about something. And God showed me the verse in Timothy where it says in the last days they'd be without natural affection. Without natural affection, I always attributed that to the sexual perversion of this day, sodomy, homosexuality, transgender. And then also I included in that the abnormal love of animals, tree huggers, wives kissing their little fifis while their husbands have no attention, people with their animals, pushing them in a buggy in Walmart, talking to them and kissing them, making over them like they're their children. It's unnatural. And that's what I thought that verse was referring to. But God convicted me and showed me something because of something I was going through. And God tied it with the verse commandment in the 10 Commandments. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the earth. Ephesians says, children, obey your parents in the Lord, which this is right, and honor thy father and thy mother. Children are to obey their parents, but adult children, all children and adult children are to honor their father and mother, and there's no expiration date on that. And I've been bothered because in the last couple of years, I've talked to many people that tell me the sad stories of how their children and grandchildren are out of their life. They never talk to them, never hear from them, never see them. And we have a generation of moms and dads and grandparents that are growing old alone because their children and grandchildren have nothing to do with them. I understand that. So I started studying what the Bible said about honor. I couldn't understand what the honor was, how long it was to last, what exactly God meant when he said honor your parents. And God showed me. Not only showed me, God commanded me and compelled me and put on me, hey, Miss Carol, the responsibility of putting it in print. So I just finished reading the draft in the first edit yesterday of a book called Forgotten Honor. It's 24 chapters, 2 appendixes, Appendix A and B, a final word, and an epilogue. So it's about 30 different parts with a dedication. It's about 30 chapters. It's going to be over 200 pages, well over 200 pages. And I just finished reading it for the first time, and I was as troubled as I was when I wrote it and before I wrote it. God put that verse and that commandment of the 10, honor thy father and mother, that the days may be long. It's the only commandment with promise. Why did God say, thou shalt not commit adultery, so thy days will be long upon the earth? Why did God say, thou shalt not covet, so your days will be long upon the earth? Why did God not say, remember the Sabbath and keep it holy, that your days will be long upon the earth? He didn't say that about any of them. But when he said, honor your father and mother, that your days may be long upon the earth. Now, the negative part of that is, the Bible doesn't say this, but it is a negative understanding. If you honor your father and mother, God's going to extend your days. But if you don't honor them or dishonor them, your days will be shortened. There's a word for that in interpretation. I can't remember exactly what it is now, but it's negative interpretation. God says this, which in the negative form would imply that if you don't do this, the opposite's going to happen. You're not going to have long days, you're going to have shortened days. God's not going to extend your days, so therefore they're shortened. So this book will come out sometime this fall. Why did God say this? If you curse your father and mother, you're going to be put to death. I've heard children, little children, the way they talk to their parents, and I want to just pull them up and shake them. I've heard adult children talk to their parents, and I want to take them outside and tan their hides. And I'm not justifying abusive parents. I'm not justifying parents that are addictive, alcohol and drugs, and do ugly things. I'm not talking about them. But even for us that had an abusive parent, my father was abusive. Even that, God still expects me to bear a certain standard of honor. Now, he said, fathers, provoke not your children to wrath. So some of the things that these abusive fathers and mothers do provoke their children to do what they do. And that's where God says that's a little loophole for those children. Your parents and the way they did you caused you to do what you did. You were mean and in responding to them, you talked to them that way, but they provoked you. So I understand that. There's a thin line here, and I've not got it dealt with yet fully. I've tried to cover it in the book, but it's just impossible to cover it all. But God says that if you curse your father and mother, it's the 5th commandment, not to be considered of minor importance. And I think that's the one we consider the least of. That adultery and murder and all that's really serious. But honor your father and mother, that's the one of the 10 that's the least. It's not true. It's the only one God gave a promise with. It may be the most important one of the 10. God instructed Israel to fear his mom and daddy. Fear, chapter 19, verse 3. He told the Israelites to fear your father and mother. Now the death penalty was to be inflicted for cursing your father and mother. In Romans 1:31, Paul spoke of those without natural affection. We're told that in the last days, children would be disobedient to parents. That would be men without natural affection. This characterized the heathen of the past, and this will characterize the last days. The punishment stated here is extreme. We need to mention here that the Bible also offers grace in this regard. If we confess our sins, he's faithful and just to forgive us. So, parable of the prodigal son coming home shows grace. But God says, cursing your father and mother. I want you to think on that today. Honor your father and mother. God is pretty strict here. Then he goes on down for adultery. I got to hurry. Verses 10 through 16, he basically says this entire section deals with adultery. Adultery in every form, shape, was punishable by death. The sins of sex have caused the most powerful empires to topple. And so God says in all verses 10 through 16, all of these different relationships of idolatry, committing sex with somebody else's wife, neighbor's wife, your daughter-in-law, whoever, it was judged by death. And then verses 17 through 21, certain offenses required a lesser punishment, like seeing your father's nakedness. Incest with a full or half-sister was forbidden, and the penalty was to be executed publicly. God demanded cleanliness in every detail of his people's lives, especially those that had to do with sexual relations. God forbade sexual relations between those who are near of kin. He did not say that they would not bear children, but that they should die childless. The children would die before the parents who were guilty of this crime. So God gives the offender of the lesser offenses, certain offenses, lesser penalties, but it was having relationship with a aunt or uncle, niece, something like that, or uncovering their nakedness, but it wasn't as it was in the verse 10 through 16. You have to read that again. I've done read it. But the conclusion to all of this, and it's about 7 minutes still, in verses 20 through 22, God put the Canaanites out of the land because they committed all these awful crimes. That's why he said destroy them. He warns Israel, he's going to put them out of the land too if they do the same thing. Over and over again, they went into captivity because of their sins. So he told them they were to walk, not in the manner of the nations where they were going, because he had cast them out before them. They committed all these things, and he abhorred them. So God says, I'm sending you to Canaan, but don't you do what they did. I kicked them out because of these sins. Now, don't you do what they did. So that's the basis of all of these verses. Verse 23, he ends up with this. He says, walk not in the manners of the nation I cast out before they committed all these things, and I abhorred them. This should answer the question as to the justice of God in destroying some of the nations that occupied Palestine. As a result of these awful sins, they were eaten up with social diseases. I mentioned that yesterday. God forbade his people to take or touch anything in the city of Jericho when they went in the time of conquest. Evidently, venereal diseases had reached epidemic proportions. So that's one of the reasons God destroyed all the Canaanites, is because venereal disease was running rampant, and God said, don't even touch anything. When you go into Jericho and I destroy the city, don't touch it. Don't take nothing or touch nothing, because they were eat up with venereal disease. Then in verse 24, he said, I've given you a land of milk and honey. That's the promise that he gave to Abraham, promise he gave to Joshua and Moses. They were going to be planted trees, and they're going to be all types of fruit and vegetables. It's going to be a land flowing with milk and honey, promised to Abraham. And then in verse 25, he says, you therefore shall put difference between clean and unclean. So that's why God's doing all this. He's trying to teach them to be able to tell the difference between right and wrong, clean and unclean. Hey, Brother Scott, clean and unclean. He said, you're my people. I'm a holy God. I'm the Lord your God, and I'm holy. And I want you to be holy. It's all about teaching his people to be a holy people. So he's teaching them you don't plant corn and wheat. You don't wear linen and wool. You don't mix breed cattle. And you go into these nations, you're not to do like they do, because I want you to learn the difference between clean and unclean, right and wrong. And so that was the purpose of all of this. God reviews all these statutes so that he could make a different and a holy people. He began with their diet, and he concludes with their lifestyle. And then the last verse, verse 26 and 27, he says, be holy, for I'm holy. I've severed you from other people, and you should be mine. And so this should be a lesson to us and to our nation today. God is high and holy, and he demands holiness. That is the key to the book of Leviticus, holiness. And he closes out chapter 20 with verse 27, when once again he mentions, don't go seeking a familiar spirit or anybody that is a wizard, because you will be put to death. That is the finality of this chapter. So God is repeating the moral law and the judgment of things, judgment of penalty, capital punishment for certain sins, such as, we went over them. First capital punishment would be on offering your child or children to the false gods, Molech and other false gods. Capital punishment to anybody that offered up their child to a false god. Capital punishment to anybody that practiced or sought familiar spirits or wizards. Capital punishment for anybody that cursed their father or mother. I'll talk about that some more. Then capital punishment for those that committed adultery. And he names all the ones that he would kill and destroy for. So it sounds like an awful harsh God. He's not harsh. God's just holy. And that's the thing that our generation doesn't seem to quite understand. We somehow or another in the church think that holiness was what God required for Israel, but he doesn't require it for the church. But God does repeat in Peter that be ye therefore holy, for I am holy, saith the Lord. Holiness is a standard that God never changes. Well, that's the end of chapter 20. Tomorrow we'll go into chapter 21. That deals with the acts and the lifestyle of the priest concerning these things we've talked about and some of the things that they're restricted from doing. So it goes back to the priest again tomorrow. So we'll cover on Thursday. We will cover chapter 21 in Leviticus. I hope you all have a good day today. I hope you enjoy your day. Be safe and careful as you're out and about. Be sure and pray for us and continue praying one for another. Hope you're enjoying the book of Leviticus. We've got 6 more chapters and we'll be through. Then we'll be in the book of Numbers, and we're going to get moving quicker as we go through and get into Deuteronomy and then head into the other books of the Bible. We've got some good things ahead for you, so stay tuned. It's going to get good. Be looking for our books. Our new devotional, Bread from Heaven, will be coming out sometime this summer. It'll go to the publisher in the next couple of weeks. And then also we'll be doing the book on Forgotten Honor this fall. And then the last book of this year will be the follow-up book to My Name is Depression. It'll be My Name is Depression, The Journey Forward. It'll be the parallel book to go along to follow up on this thought of depression that we've been dealing with. By the way, we have our Zoom class on Mondays. We're about halfway through. We should finish up in the next 4 or 5 weeks. So if you'd like to be a part of our Zoom call on the next session, we'll be signing up those that would like to join in the next time. We'll probably do this again sometime later this year. Okay, I love you all. If you haven't got my books yet, be sure and check us out on Amazon or contact me. I've got my autobiography, In the Shadow of Revival, which is right here behind me. The Shadow of Revival, 50 Years of Ministry. Be sure and check it out on Amazon or write me and you can save a little money if you buy it from me. Or My Name is Depression. This one is a hot seller. I've got to send out 5 today. This one is going faster than the others, and so we enjoy what God's doing. God is blessing. God is helping us. So be sure and check out our other books. We got 16 or 17 books on Amazon. I've got 5 or 6 more fixing to be downloaded, plus the new ones. So we're moving pretty fast here. We've got our meeting next week for our ministry outreach to expand our ministry, as we've talked about for several weeks now. So that's going to happen here pretty quick. So pray for us, pray for wisdom, pray for funds. We need some more supporters, and we need about $3,000 or $4,000 more to get everything done that we need to do. We're going to have to put in a lot of money to buy some programs to pay the guys that are going to do all of this. It'll be a monthly fee. They'll get a percentage of what's sold, and I'll have a monthly fee on the apps I have to buy for them to use to produce everything I want done. And then I got to pay an upfront amount to get them started to do all the things we're going to do. Plus, I've got 7, 8, 9, 10 books coming out in the next 3 years. Each one of those cost a pretty penny to get those produced. So we need some support, and we could use about $5,000 here in the next few weeks. So pray God to supply that need. I love you all. God bless you, and hope to see you all soon. Scott, we're up your way this week. Where are you at? Knoxville, Kingsport, Johnson City? Let me know where you're at. Hey, Brother Snyder, hope you're doing good. Praying for your wife. Hope her treatments are going well. I'll check on you guys a little bit later. Stay in touch with us. But Scott, let me know where you are. I don't know if you're close enough I can see you or so I can get there, but let me know. Okay, love you guys. Y'all have a good day. Keep praying.